Emily Turner, how long do you plan to keep this chaos going, huh? Enough is enough. At 2 a.m., startled awake by the furious shouting that exploded right next to my ear, I bolted upright in bed. Still half conscious and disoriented, I glanced at my smartphone screen, and the caller ID read Daniel Brooks. He was the neighbor of the Laguna Beach vacation home I had purchased just a few weeks earlier. Mr. Brooks, I'm very sorry, but what are you talking about? I'm at my primary residence in the city right now. Don't play dumb. There are about 10 young people partying at your house right now, blasting loud music and drinking like there's no tomorrow. It's so noisy we can't live our peaceful lives. What do you think the quiet of a residential neighborhood is supposed to mean? His voice was trembling with rage. That quiet street in Laguna Beach was home to many wealthy retirees. He had seemed genuinely pleased when I told him I would be buying a house there. A party? At my place? That's right. The street is completely jammed with flashy sports cars, and those kids are even splashing alcohol all over the hedges in my garden. I'm this close to calling the police. No, I already am. If you don't put an end to this hell within 30 minutes, don't think you'll get away with it either. The call was cut off unilaterally. My heart began pounding violently deep inside my ears. That was impossible. That house was something I had finally obtained after running 3 Italian restaurants day and night without rest for 10 long years. I had just moved in furniture and completely replaced every interior detail with brand new fittings in preparation for the official move next week. There shouldn't have been anyone there at all. With trembling hands, I launched the home security app. The front entrance, the living room, and the spacious terrace with its sweeping ocean view were all equipped with the latest security cameras. The few seconds it took for the footage to load felt like an eternity. And when the scene finally appeared on the screen, I sucked in a sharp breath. There they were. Young people jumping onto the pristine white Italian leather sofa I had carefully chosen with their shoes still on, spraying champagne at each other using expensive crystal glasses. Hip-hop music thundered at an ear-splitting volume. In the terrace jacuzzi, unfamiliar men were diving in wearing nothing but their underwear, and right at the center of it all, I finally got it. This is my new stage in life. The one shouting that, while chugging straight from a vintage wine bottle that had been prepared for me, was my younger sister, Amanda. The glowing screen of my smartphone turned my entire world into hell. The living room, which should have been gleaming white while filled with the California sea breeze, had now been reduced to the wreckage of a cheap nightclub. The first thing that caught my eye was the custom-made kitchen counter imported directly from Italy. The protective film I had been looking forward to peeling off myself was cruelly torn away. The stripped film had been crumpled up and tossed onto the floor like trash. Right on top of it, someone had spread out pizza boxes and was spilling cocktails with greasy, oil-soaked fingers. If only the film had still been there. It might have been salvageable, but watching stains spread across the exposed stone made me feel like I was about to lose my mind. Look at this. Isn't it amazing? I could see one of Amanda's hangers-on had even wandered into my bedroom. The casino bed that no one had ever laid down on, not even once. Across its pure white linens, the 3 French bulldogs Amanda owned were running around with muddy paws. The dogs barked excitedly, and one of them viciously tore into my custom-made curtains with its teeth. I felt something sour rise up from the pit of my stomach. This white stone villa in Laguna Beach was my life itself. In my 20s, I started out washing dishes at a small Italian restaurant in Manhattan Beach. With hands covered in burns, kneading pasta late into the night, I worked every single day without rest until I became the owner of 3 restaurants. On the screen, Amanda was waving a selfie stick around and shouting at her Instagram live stream. Everyone, my villa is finally finished. Buying a beachfront mansion at 29 is basically proof of my talent, right? The life of a successful person is way more comfortable than I imagined. She casually yanked the cork out of a vintage wine bottle that cost $3,000 and that I hadn't even taken a single sip from yet. And then, unbelievably, she started dancing while splashing it all over the terrace. My sister? Oh, Emily is probably buried in the smell of garlic in some restaurant kitchen right now. This kind of refined lifestyle just doesn't suit her. This house belongs to someone glamorous like me. In response to her words, her entourage burst into vulgar laughter. What they were trampling underfoot was the oak hardwood flooring I had spent hours polishing by hand. This wasn't just a party. This was a violation of my soul. The latest security system was recording every second of this catastrophe to the cloud without missing a single moment. With trembling hands, I pressed the save button, methodically securing the evidence. I can't believe this. The camera's gaze shifted to the kitchen. It was the symbol of my pride, a space that held my dreams as a chef, equipped with professional-grade ovens and refrigerators. But that place had now been turned into a garbage dump. Amanda and her friends had pulled out the finest caviar and a custom cheese set from the refrigerator, the very things I had been looking forward to opening alone on the first night after moving in. Look at this. Emily was hiding stuff this expensive, trying to keep it all to herself. What a cheap older sister. Laughing, Amanda scooped the caviar directly with a silver spoon and brought it to her mouth. The rest of it, unbelievably, was dumped straight onto the floor. The dogs competed to lick it up, and a raw, fishy stain spread across the marble flooring. Amanda, I won't forgive this. Tonight I'm going to crush that shallow fantasy of yours completely, without mercy. I grabbed my iPhone and dialed 911. Yes, this is 911. Is this an emergency? The operator's calm voice echoed in my ear. Gripping the steering wheel with trembling hands, I pulled my Audi onto highway, heading toward Laguna Beach. More than 10 intruders have broken onto my private property on Lakeshore Drive in Laguna Beach and are destroying my belongings. I am on my way there now. My name is Emily Turner. I have the deed and all legal documents. Please dispatch the police immediately. I ended the call and glanced at the iPhone fixed into the dashboard holder. On the screen, the madness was still raging as I drove 80 miles per hour down the highway in the dead of night. As I stared at the lights streaming past outside the window, the hellish 10 years it took to obtain that house flashed through my mind. The days I washed dishes at a cheap restaurant in New York until grease seeped under my fingernails. When I opened my first independent restaurant, I gave up my apartment just to pay rent and slept wrapped in a sleeping bag in the back room of the shop. The sensation of boiling pasta in a stifling summer kitchen without air conditioning, on the verge of collapsing from heat exhaustion, is still burned into my skin. Meanwhile, what about my younger sister, Amanda? She bragged about having talent, burned through our parents' money, and whenever she ran short, she came crying to me. Emily, you're successful anyway. Helping your little sister is only natural, right? That was her favorite line. But that night, she crossed the final line. Not only did she beg for money, she turned that house, the place I built so I could sleep undisturbed, listening only to the sound of the waves, into a toy to satisfy her own vanity. The eyes staring back at me in the rearview mirror were colder and more fixed than I had ever seen before. My anger completed its circuit and transformed into an icy calm. As a restaurant owner, I had resolved countless problems. Embezzling managers, drunken, violent customers. Each time I fought with evidence and logic, and survived. Amanda, you seem to think of me as nothing more than a dull, overly serious older sister, but you still don't know how ruthless a business owner can truly be. In the distance, I could see the highest ridgeline of Laguna Beach and the dark boundary where it met the ocean. I will calculate the price you owe for defiling my castle down to the very last cent, and then I will present you with the bill of your life. The sharp screech of my beloved Audi's brakes echoed through the quiet residential streets of Laguna Beach. The moment I stepped out of the car, crushing bass slammed into my eardrums, slicing straight through the salty night air. Daniel was right. This place was no longer an upscale neighborhood, but a vulgar open-air festival ground. Several unfamiliar, cheap-looking sports cars were carelessly parked along my private driveway, completely blocking the way. Hey, where do you think you're going, lady? This is an invite-only private party. At the front entrance, an unfamiliar man holding a red plastic cup in one hand stepped into my path. Move aside. This is my house. Huh? What are you talking about? This is Amanda's vacation home, you know? Do I remember a plain-looking woman like you among her friends? He snorted as he looked me up and down. I shot him a cold glance, slammed my shoulder into him, and forced the door open. The instant I stepped inside, my vision nearly went dark. Even though the air conditioner was set to its lowest temperature, the room was suffocating with body heat, sweat, and the sickly sweet haze of marijuana. Sticky trails of spilled alcohol streaked across the polished flooring, and shards of broken glass were scattered everywhere. Food stains that looked like someone had thrown them clung to the walls, and cheap party streamers were sloppily dangling from the custom lighting fixtures I had personally chosen. Haha, come on, everyone, drink more. In the center of the living room, Amanda was standing on my white sofa, wildly shaking a bottle of champagne. Around her, a swarm of sycophantic hangers on clustered together, praising her as if she were the rightful owner of the house. Amanda, my shout was swallowed whole by the blasting music. I lunged toward the audio system and yanked out the main power cable with all my strength. Silence fell in an instant. As a piercing ringing echoed deep inside my ears, dozens of pairs of eyes turned toward me at once. Hey, what do you think you're doing? It was just getting good. Amanda stepped down from the sofa and glared at me with open irritation. But the instant she realized it was me, a flicker of unease crossed her face for just a second. That expression was immediately painted over with her usual brazen smile. Oh, wow, it's Emily Turner. What's wrong? Why do you look so scary? Oh, I get it. You wanted to join the party too, didn't you? You don't have to be shy, you know. I'll make a special exception and invite you, since I'm your little sister. She didn't understand, not even by a millimeter, how serious her crime was. Invite me. You're inviting me to my own house? My voice was lower and colder than I ever expected it to be. Amanda snorted and deliberately set the glass she was holding down at my feet. What's with you, uptight Emily? You don't need to get so angry. You're always working anyway. You never even have time to use this house, right? So I'm just breathing some life into it for you. We're family, so what's the big deal? Don't think that being family means everything is forgiven. At that moment, red and blue lights began spinning violently outside the house. With the screech of burning tires, 3 police cars slid into the private driveway. Police, nobody move. The door was kicked open, and several sheriff's deputies stormed into the house. More than 10 young people who had been partying wildly froze in an instant. Who's responsible here? A large officer swept the room with a hard, intimidating gaze. Amanda faltered for a split second, but then quickly put on her trademark, tragic heroine expression and stepped forward. Officer, please help us. This woman suddenly barged in and ruined our party. She's my sister, but she's emotionally unstable and… Don't lie. I am the owner, Emily Turner. These people have trespassed onto my property without my permission. When I stated this firmly, Amanda shrieked in a high-pitched voice. Illegal trespassing? How rude. This is our family's vacation home. Even our parents said it's a place for the whole family to use. It's shared property. One of her hangers-on shouted mockingly from the side. Yeah, what a stingy older sister. The officer looked back and forth between Amanda and me, then let out a sigh. Ma'am, is what she's saying true? Is this property jointly owned by the family? Amanda puffed out her chest, wearing a triumphant grin. Yes, the paperwork is still being processed, but in practical terms, it's everyone's house. I let out a cold laugh and pulled a single folder from my bag. Being processed? No, everything is already finalized. This is the notarized deed. Look at the owner's section. The only name listed there is Emily Turner. And then… I took out my tablet and opened the control panel. Everything about how she got into this house is recorded as well. I have never once given her a key. By the way, Amanda, how did you even find this place? As I quietly asked that question while showing the tablet screen to the officer, the color drained rapidly from Amanda's face. On the screen was security footage from my office taken a week earlier. It clearly showed Amanda sneaking up to my desk while I was out of the room for a meeting, secretly stealing a spare key and copies of documents. This is, well, you said it was shared family property, but the moment you stole the key, that became deliberate theft and a planned intrusion. The officer leaned in to look at the footage, his expression hardening. This is decisive evidence. Miss, did you take this key without authorization? Amanda's eyes darted around wildly as she desperately searched for an excuse. No, it's not like that. My sister forgot the key, so I was just trying to return it, and I happen to know the location. Stop lying. I never once told you that I had bought this place. Who told you where it was? When I stepped closer, Amanda finally cracked and let her shallow secret spill out. I have a friend in real estate. Ryan works at Suncoast Realty. He told me. He said you bought the best property in Laguna, paid in cash all at once. He even gave me the address in detail. A murmur of shock rippled through the friends gathered around. The officer, showing not a trace of sympathy, reached for the handcuffs on his belt. Illegal acquisition of customer information, theft, and trespassing. Amanda, what you've done can no longer be dismissed as family selfishness. Amanda Clark, you are being detained on suspicion of trespassing on property without legal rights and theft. You will be informed of your rights. You've got to be kidding me. Wait, Emily, are you really going to have your own family arrested? Amanda's scream echoed through the room. Her friends finally realized that they had been complicit in a crime and began to panic, but the officers immediately stopped them. All of you, show your IDs. You will all be recorded as accomplices to trespassing. Step outside now. You're getting into the patrol cars. In that instant, Amanda's fake kingdom collapsed with an audible crash. Let go of me. Don't touch me. I'm Emily's sister. Amanda's desperate struggle continued right up until the moment she was shoved into the patrol car. But the strong-built officers showed no mercy. Cold handcuffs tightened around her wrists, and her luxury brand dress was left crumpled and ruined beyond recognition. The hangers-on who had mocked me while siding with Amanda became nothing more than criminal suspects themselves. Hey, Amanda, you said this was your house, didn't you? Miss Emily, we really didn't know anything. They were led away with their heads hanging low in humiliation. The flashing warning lights lined up along the private driveway cast a solemn glow over the night in Laguna Beach. Eventually, the sirens faded into the distance, and an unbearable silence returned to my castle. But it was no longer the sacred silence it once had been. I stood alone in the center of the devastated living room, unable to move. What assaulted my nose was the sour stench of beer, the lingering sweetness of marijuana smoke, and the raw smell of the dogs. At my feet, caviar spilled across the marble floor had hardened into ugly black stains. The pure white sofa I had loved was smeared with mud and grease, left in a pitiful, ruined state. Ha! A dry laugh slipped out of me. It wasn't that my anger had disappeared. I simply couldn't find anywhere to put my emotions in the face of such overwhelming absurdity. Sensing someone's gaze, I lifted my head and saw Daniel Brooks standing beyond the front door. His expression was still severe, but after seeing my firm, unyielding stance, some of the sharpness seemed to have drained away. Mr. Brooks. I walked over on heavy legs and apologized sincerely. I am truly sorry. I will never allow anything like this to happen again. I will bring in a cleaning crew first thing tomorrow. He looked at my utterly exhausted face and said, I understand now that you are a victim too, but this is a place where people come to live quietly. I expect better next time. Yes, absolutely. After he left, I immediately began scrolling through my contacts on my smartphone. First, I would present the evidence needed to destroy the agent who leaked the information, Ryan. Then I would call a specialized cleaning service and a locksmith. I turned off the lights in the living room and stepped out onto the terrace. From beyond the dark ocean, the light of dawn was beginning to stain the horizon. The new day might not be the radiant, dreamlike one I had once imagined, but at the very least, there was no longer any family here trying to exploit me. I tightened my grip around the real key clenched in my right hand. After a night like a storm, morning came, and it was 11 a.m. Just as I finally finished tidying up part of the mud-covered living room and took a sip of cold coffee, my smartphone vibrated. My father's name was on the screen. Without hesitation, I switched to speakerphone. Emily, have you lost your mind? Amanda just made bail and came back home. Seeing her become that terrified is a disgrace to our family. My father was furious because Amanda, after completing her release procedures at the police station, had contacted them first. Then my mother snatched the phone from him. Emily, Amanda was too scared to say anything in front of a cold, logical sister like you. She's crying her eyes out right next to us right now. If you've become successful and built yourself a castle in Laguna Beach, isn't it a basic family decency to open part of it to your little sister? I calmly dismissed their delusions and hung up. But the real firestorm began just a few minutes later. As if they had been waiting for the call to end, notifications started exploding on my smartphone at an abnormal pace. When I opened Instagram, I saw a flood of abusive comments pouring into my restaurant's account. The cause was a post Amanda had made the very moment she walked out of the police station after being released. The post showed a selfie taken in front of the Laguna Beach Police Department sign, her eyes unnaturally reddened and swollen by filters. Alongside it was a lie so outrageous it made my vision blur. I can't believe this. I was thrown out of the vacation home filled with our family's memories and arrested by the police. By my own sister, Emily. This was supposed to be the place my late grandmother left to me. She's using her power to take everything away from me. Hashtag cruel sister. Hashtag give back family bonds. My grandmother's memories? When she passed away, this place was nothing but an empty lot. Amanda had turned blatant trespassing into a tragic story of a family inheritance dispute. People who knew nothing began hurling abuse at my restaurant, calling me a disgusting owner. But my fingers weren't trembling. If anything, I felt a quiet thrill, like a hunter calmly cornering her prey. Fine, Amanda. If you plan to win the public over with that cheap performance, then I'll crush your entire career with the overwhelming force of the truth. I opened the folder of high-resolution truth that I had backed up to the cloud the night before. I opened the posting screen of the official account for my restaurant, La Luna. The defamatory comments were still increasing by the second. Are you ready, Amanda? This is the weight of the 10 years you trampled on. I edited last night's footage into short clips and uploaded them. The title was a single line, The Truth About the Laguna Beach Villa. The first video showed Amanda laughing in my bedroom, saying she had stolen the key and throwing the dogs onto my bed. The second video showed her sneering that a woman like me wouldn't understand the taste while pouring out an expensive bottle of wine. The third video captured her arrogant declaration when I arrived, saying it was shared property and that she was free to use it however she wanted. Just 5 minutes after posting, social media exploded. Wait, this is nothing like what we were told. This isn't a grandmother's inheritance at all, it's straight up trespassing. Emily, I'm sorry for doubting you. This is beyond awful. As public opinion violently swung in my favor, an even more ridiculous follow-up attack began. The friends who had been taken away with Amanda started releasing secretly recorded videos and audio one after another to protect themselves. Lauren, a self-proclaimed influencer, fired the opening shot. Everyone, I was deceived. I recorded what she was saying behind the scenes. In the audio, Amanda said this: Emily should spend her whole life stuck in a kitchen reeking of garlic. The money she earns is nothing more than funding for us to live our sparkling lives. That audio became the decisive blow. The friends scrambling to save themselves began tagging their posts with hashtag Amanda Lies, shifting all responsibility for the destruction of the property on to Amanda. How does it feel to be shot in the back by the people who were your best friends just last night, Amanda? Amanda's personal account was flooded with tens of thousands of critical comments within a single hour, and the logos of her sponsor companies vanished one after another. The attacks on my restaurant stopped, and reservations began pouring in instead. But my counterattack didn't end there. I called my lawyer, Kevin. Kevin, I'm ready. In addition to filing criminal charges for trespassing and property damage, I want to pursue civil damages to the maximum extent, and hurry the process for a restraining order as well. I stepped out onto the terrace and stared at the blue ocean. The version of me from yesterday, infected by the disease called family, no longer exists anywhere. Several months later, I was standing in front of the Orange County Superior Court. That day, I was dressed in a perfectly tailored navy suit. It was my battle armor. Emily, wait a second. From down the hallway, my utterly exhausted parents and Amanda came walking toward me. Amanda's once arrogant smile was gone, and her hair was in disarray. Are you really going to take this all the way to court? Are you satisfied with destroying your own family? Her career is already finished. My mother's shrill voice echoed through the corridor, but my lawyer, Kevin, cut her off. Mrs. Turner, please refrain from any further contact. A restraining order will be formally issued. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was solemn and tense. At the witness stand, I calmly laid out the numbers. The total amount of damages caused by the defendant is $248,000. This includes furniture repairs, specialized cleaning services, and the cost of investigating the leak of my personal information. All of these damages arose directly from the violation of my property rights. Amanda's attorney argued desperately, but the security camera footage and the whistleblower data provided by her friends completely blocked every possible escape. Defendant, you may speak. At the judge's words, Amanda looked at me with a trembling voice. Emily, please, this is too much. I don't have a single dollar to my name. Please forgive me. Tears welled up in her eyes. The version of me from the past might have been fooled by that, but the image of her dumping caviar onto the floor was burned into my retinas. Your Honor. I stood up and met her gaze head on. She is not standing here today as my sister. She is standing here as an intruder into my life. I have the right to forgive her, but I have no intention of forgiving the fact that 10 years of my hard work were defiled. I request a strict judgment. The verdict was a complete victory for me. The judge ordered Amanda to pay the full amount of damages and granted the restraining order. The moment I stepped out of the courtroom, my father tried to hurl insults at me, but I coldly told him, Dad, Mom, all financial support for your mortgage will be terminated starting next month. Try living on your own strength together with the princess you dote on so much. That is the outcome of the family bonds you chose. Behind me, I could hear Amanda collapsing into tears, but I never once looked back. Several months after the verdict, I was reviewing the report on the asset seizure. Amanda had no ability whatsoever to pay the compensation. As a result, the only things she owned, her luxury brand items, the car she had bought on a loan, and her meager savings, were all legally confiscated. But her true punishment was not limited to financial loss alone. According to rumors, Amanda is now living in conditions far harsher than the ones I endured back when I was struggling to build my career. Her influencer friends blocked her all at once. Her name became synonymous with fraud online, and she lost every single advertising job. Now, it seems she works the late-night shift at a cheap fast food restaurant on the outskirts of Los Angeles, where the floors are slick with old grease. One of my restaurant staff members happened to stop by that place and reported back to me. Boss, she was wearing a ragged uniform, crying and apologizing while drunk customers threw fries at her. There was nothing left of who she used to be. According to the staff member, the long nails she once boasted about were gone. Her fingertips were cracked and ruined, and a cheap, stinging smell of old oil, far worse than anything I was once covered in, had soaked into her skin. The husband she had desperately flattered and married abandoned her as well, slapping divorce papers down just a week after the trial. He had no intention of supporting a woman buried under massive debt. My parents, cut off from my financial support, also gave up their elegant retirement and moved into a cramped 40-year-old apartment. Perhaps they finally realized that the princess they had spoiled was incapable of taking care of them in their old age. One night, a call came into the restaurant. The number displayed on the screen was one I recognized, Amanda's. When I picked up the receiver, all I could hear through the silence was her trembling breath. Before she could say a single word, I quietly set the receiver down. The hell she is experiencing now is no one else's fault. It is simply the dark fruit born from the seeds of lies and greed she herself planted. Several weeks after the trial, the original calm finally returned to Laguna Beach. 6 a.m. I sat on a deck chair on the terrace, watching the orange sun rise over the horizon, dyeing the waves of the Pacific Ocean in gold. In my hand was a cup of coffee I had carefully brewed myself. The stench of cheap alcohol that had been spilled on the day of the chaos was gone without a trace. All that remained was the refreshing sea breeze and the clean scent of freshly repainted plaster. Thanks to professional work, the house had been perfectly restored. The sofa had been replaced with a new one, and the marble floors had been polished again, reflecting my figure like a mirror. Every trace of that illegal party had been erased, and the weight called family that had been eating away at my life was completely removed as well. Good morning, Miss Turner. It's a beautiful day today. A calm voice came from beyond the hedge in the garden. It was my neighbor, Daniel. He was out on his morning walk with his retriever. Good morning. Did you sleep well last night? Yes, thanks to you. And I'm sorry for doubting you that night during all that chaos. I've come to understand just how resolute a woman you are. I'm proud to have a neighbor like you here in Laguna. He lifted his hat slightly and smiled. I felt a warmth spread deep in my chest. Thank you. Next time, I'll bring some pasta from my restaurant when I come by. The silence after he left was different from the lonely silence I had known before. It was the kind of quiet that only those who have protected their own rights are allowed to enjoy. On social media, rumors about Amanda's downfall were still circulating, but they no longer had anything to do with me. People would call me cold-hearted, but protecting what you have built with your own hands is justice. What I gained was not merely a luxurious building. It was the strength to say no by my own will, and a freedom that no one can threaten. Wrapped in the sound of the waves, I have finally become the true master of my own life.